Big Ten Power Rankings right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by for the best in discussion, debate, and analysis based on your participation. Please leave those comments and questions down below. Let's run through it. Bottom to top, and holding down the worst spot in the Big Ten, number 18 in the Big Ten, 18th place. Doesn't that sound great? This has been locked and loaded, and they have certainly proven to be the worst. Purdue, 1-7, 0-5 in the Big Ten. Got Hudson Card back at quarterback last week, 21 of 37, 267 yards for him. They had a shot to win this game against Northwestern. It went to overtime. They opted to not kick the field goal, bypassed it for 4th and 6 play, and they did not get it. They gave up the game-winning touchdown, and again, Purdue loses to Northwestern. They've lost 5 consecutive games in the Big Ten, and for all of that, they now get a trip to Columbus, Ohio this week. At number 18, Boiler Up! Drawing upon that strong 7-win season and bowl victory over Miami in 2023, Greg Schiano's ball club did not take advantage of a weak schedule, the weakest in the Big Ten, as the Big Ten office did Rutgers all sorts of favors. And they somewhat looked the part early in the season, going to Lane Stadium, winning in Blacksburg against Virginia Tech, and of course getting that win at home against Washington. But ever since, Rutgers football has been abysmal. They're supposed to be a tough football team, be able to run it and stop the run. They've not been able to do really either one, especially the defensive side has been lacking. They've lost 4 consecutive games in the Big Ten by 67 total points. They're off a bye week. They've got to reset. They're 4-4. They still have a chance to get to postseason play. Taking on Minnesota this week, the Scarlet Knights at number 17. Only a classic USC collapse in the final minute of play at Maryland could save the Terps from an 0-5 start in the Big Ten. Of course, Mike Locksley has been building this program up from 7-6, 8-5, 8-5 with 3 consecutive bowl wins, but the ascension has stopped in a cold stop. This is not a good football team. It's a pretty lousy football team with some skill position players and not much else. Billy Edwards is playing decently, but in the trenches, Maryland getting throttled. The last time they took to the field, Minnesota scored 48 points against them. And guess what? Terps defense, they gave up 48 to Minnesota. You've got a trip to Eugene, Oregon at number 16 in the Big Ten. Terps. While it's far from the storybook season, year 1 under David Braun, lifting Northwestern out of the controversy and chaos of Pat Fitzgerald's final days, and a 1-11 record from the previous season to 8-5 in a bowl win against Utah. Northwestern at least has distanced itself from the bottom of the Big Ten with a decisive win against Maryland. And last weekend, Jack Louse threw for 250 yards, and Northwestern got it done in OT against Purdue at number 15 in the Big Ten at 2-4 in the conference. The Cats. We know now that the Husker hype of the preseason was bolstered by Matt Rule's reputation. Dylan Raiola's status as a 5-star starting quarterback coming in as a freshman, the brand, and possibly a weak schedule. Nebraska took advantage early, got that win against Colorado, which is gaining steam by the week as the Buffs are now 6-3. However, Nebraska not playing good football now. Can't get a win in the Big Ten. Losing to the likes of UCLA last week as Dylan Raiola fired 2 interceptions, then left with an injury. Heinrich Harburg came in to try to salvage the game. He threw a pick to seal it. This team only averaged 3 yards per carry on the ground against a UCLA defense as Nebraska lost at home to UCLA. Yes, all that momentum, all that hype, all that expectation down in the dumps at 5-4 as the Huskers may not even go bowling this year. At number 14 in the Big Ten, GBR. We assumed that Michigan State had to take on the 2 best teams in the Big Ten back-to-back in Oregon and Ohio State, but little did we know a few weeks ago that they were probably facing one of the top 3 when Indiana came to town and smacked them around 47-10 after Sparty took a 10-0 lead. This is still a work in progress, including quarterback Aiden Childs, the 19-year-old, threw 2 picks before he had to leave the Indiana game due to injury. This offense has turned it over 18 times. Jonathan Smith, I believe, will eventually get it done in East Lansing. But for right now, the 13th seed in the Big Ten, according to the Voice of College Football, Sparty. Number 12 out of 18 teams is not necessarily a lofty position, but considering what UCLA has endured and shown us this year, this is a vastly improved team over the last month under first-year head coach Deshaun Foster. Couldn't get out of their own way early. Took Minnesota to the final play of the game a few weeks ago with the Rose Bowl. That was our first indication. Then they went all the way across country in the much ballyhooed can't travel, can't win conference and beat Rutgers 35-32. And then, bam, 2 more time zones to be traveled this past Saturday, and they got it done against Nebraska 27-20. 3 picks by the defense, held Nebraska to 3 yards per carry. Ethan Garbers has stabilized the quarterback position. At number 12 in the Big Ten, how about those Bruins? We thought it might be smoke and mirrors when Wisconsin went on a 3-game winning streak. Those 3 teams are now 3-13 combined in the Big Ten, Rutgers, Purdue, and Northwestern. The Badgers got a dose of reality at Iowa over the weekend, 42-10. This was not a typical Big Ten Western Division battle between Wisconsin and Iowa where there is a stalemate. They were a 3-point underdog based on being on the road, but Vegas got this way off. 330 rushing yards against that Badger defense. Braden Locke has not been playing good football. 8 touchdowns and 8 picks. Wisconsin's not a good football team. They beat the bad teams. They cannot compete with anybody else, despite a strong effort the week before at Camp Randall Stadium against Penn State when they held a 14-13 lead in the third quarter. At number 11 in the Big Ten, the Badgers. I have consistently called this the highest ceiling, lowest floor combination in the Big Ten. And I started saying that way before the season even started, and it has come to roost. USC's fourth quarter collapses have become classic in the Big Ten. It's almost a weekly affair. The last rendition was at Washington, driving the ball inside the 15-yard line twice in the final 5 minutes and blowing it both times, losing 26-21. We can count, of course, on a prolific USC offense, right? Get this stat. Iowa and USC have both played Washington, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. USC has scored 76 points against those 3 teams. Iowa has scored 113. Miller Moss with 3 picks at Washington, and of course USC once again goes down to defeat. They're 2-5 in the conference, but the 10th best team in the conference is SC. We do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. This is our weekly Big Ten Power Rankings. We plan on getting to all 4 of the power conferences. Next stop at number 9 is Michigan. Of course, the 3-time defending Big Ten champions. That crown is going to be handed to somebody else. They're 5-4, 3-3 in the Big Ten. They hung with Oregon to a certain extent, showed some pride, had a 28-17 game in the third quarter after Davis Warren led an impressive touchdown drive. They got 2 consecutive punts on defense, but they committed a penalty that really sent them reeling. And the next shot that they had, down 2 scores in the fourth quarter, they called some ridiculous plays, trying to trick the Oregon Ducks inside the 15-yard line. Did not get it done. Game over. Unfortunately for Michigan, they are facing a similar style offense this week when they go to Indiana. At number 9 in the Big Ten, Sharon Moore in Michigan. We addressed Washington's defensive stands in the fourth quarter against USC, which led to a 26-21 win. Also, Will Rogers, 262 yards passing. Jonah Coleman, one of the best backs in the conference, ran for 104 against the Trojans. Washington, yes, at times they are overmatched on the road against the likes of Iowa and Indiana, but also some nice wins against Michigan. And now recently, of course, it's USC holding up at 5-4 and number 8 in the Big Ten, the Huskies. Brett Bielema just does not lose to Minnesota. Well, as of Saturday, he now does. Bielema was 10-0 against the Gophers while the head coach at Minnesota and now at Illinois. But a 6-2 Illinois team at home could not hold a fourth quarter lead and lost to Minnesota. Luke Altmaier fumbled it twice, and the Illini fall in this one, and therefore they fall another spot in our Big Ten Power Rankings right here at the Voice of College Football, the Illini. I think we can now officially call it a roll by the Minnesota Golden Gophers. 4 straight, yes. Definition, that's a roll, especially for the Gophers. Now 6-3. It looked like it was going to be a horrendous season for Minnesota football. Lost the opener against North Carolina. Lost a close one against Michigan. But they have persevered. Max Brosmer is playing his best football now, getting better by the week. Darius Taylor with a fine effort again, 131 yards against the Illini. Minnesota's pass defense has only given up 6 passing touchdowns this year, and they scored the final 10 points of the game in the final 5 minutes to beat Illinois. At number 6 in our Big Ten Power Rankings, row the boat. Too little, too late is the narrative for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Had Brendan Sullivan replaced Cade McNamara weeks ago, maybe Iowa would be in place to continue a run to the college football playoff. However, a third loss in upset fashion to Michigan State derailed the season, and now they've put together a couple wins. And of course, Caleb Johnson, he has been the constant along with special teams and defense. Johnson, the number 2 rusher in college football behind Ashton Jeanty, scored his 20th rushing touchdown in a romp against Wisconsin, tying Sean Green for the school record in a single season. Having a nice season, although it will not land in the college football playoffs. Iowa. Now, a clear delineation between the rest of the Big Ten and the upper crust. And yes, Penn State fans, I understand this is not going to soothe your pain to still be counted among the elite of the Big Ten. Penn State at number 4 in our power rankings, but there is still season to play, and they will still have their opportunities. They just can't beat Ohio State. James Franklin is now 1 and a zillion against Ohio State. 10-0 lead, couldn't score a touchdown on offense, stopped twice inside the 5-yard line. New offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki from Kansas. The stats say otherwise, but not getting it done against the best defenses. So here we are with Penn State once again at 7-1, which should land in a college football playoff. They got 12 teams. But in regards to playing the elite in the Big Ten, another failure. At number 4 in the Big Ten, we are. Now we line up 2 and 3. On one hand, we got the team that's undefeated, that has controlled every game, won by double digits, been overly impressive and consistent week after week after week after week. On the other hand, we've got a team that actually has a win against an elite team in the conference, one of the best in the country. They also have one loss, but that was against the number 1 team by 1 point on the road in a game in which they had the football in field goal range to close out the game. But you know what? Love for Indiana. They may never reach these heights again. Who knows? They're 9-0. Let's honor Indiana football. So at number 3 is Ohio State. Okay, Buckeyes, of course, got a big win in Happy Valley. To Ryan Day detractors, that's not going to be good enough because they're going to say, well, they're supposed to beat Penn State. Well, of course they are. They're supposed to beat everyone. But considering how they looked, especially on the offensive line against Nebraska, that was a monumental effort against one of the best defenses in the country. The offensive line smashed away for 6 yards per carry by Travion Henderson and Quinshawn Judkins. After trailing 10-0, Ohio State did not blink, won the football game, and move on at 7-1. At number 3 in the Big Ten, Buckeyes. Now the Kurt Cignetti story, and of course Indiana is playing the most consistent football of anyone in the country. Even Oregon had the 2 hiccups early against Idaho and Boise State. Indiana has played everyone and controlled, if not dominated, everyone on the schedule. That's what's impressive. Yeah, they trailed 10-0. Then they scored 47 consecutive points in East Lansing. Curtis Rourke back at quarterback. That is good to see. Did not want to see the Indiana season derailed because of losing Rourke against Washington, but they were able to navigate that game rather nicely, rather easily at home against Washington with Taven Jackson at quarterback. This is a team with weapons, and this game coming up at home against Michigan is going to be rather intriguing. Check out the Indiana high-flying offense against still a stout Michigan defense. At number 2 in the Big Ten, Hoosiers. At number 1, the Oregon Ducks. Number 1 in the Big Ten, number 1 in the country. Way too fast, way too athletic, way too good, way too efficient for Michigan. They win that game 38-17, did tack on a late touchdown that I wasn't too much of a fan of as getting the 14 points, but that's another story. All right, the concern coming out of this game is, of course, Tez Jackson. Separated shoulder, could be out 2 to 3 weeks. We shall see. Oregon's got a lot of buffer, though, in that record at 9-0. They have been rolling now for 7 consecutive games. They have looked like the best team in the nation, and they have earned this ranking, not just in the Big Ten, but in all of college football. At number 1, Dylan Gabriel, Dan Lanning, a tremendous offensive line, weapons all over the place, and a defense playing lights out for the most part. They got it all working. It's Oregon. Leave your comments and questions down below. Again, we are going to do our best to get to all the conferences for the power rankings. We also want to produce videos in which we line up all the conference championship scenarios and college football related scenarios with all the conferences this week, week 11. Like and subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football.